Hello and welcome to day 5, the final day of our training this week. Today we're going to cover policy management, group settings, and I'm going to show you the network access control as well. And then we'll have plenty of time left for questions and answers at the end. Joining me today, as always, is Mandy.
Happy Friday, we made it through the week.
And also I have Jerome with me as well.
Hello, everybody.
So I'm going to start off, I got a pop-up on my computer. And it kind of ties into the requests yesterday. Usually I get asked this question, but I wanted to show it to you as I did not. So let me share my screen and you're going to see one of those requests. This is a little bit tied on from yesterday, but as I've got the request up, I thought it might be quite useful for people to see. And this is a request for a browser extension. So I'm going to send that request. And then I'm going to log into the portal, which I usually log in before I come on, but I kind of forgot today, so bear with me.
It is Friday. We're all just a little bit brain numb.
Now, this is only my training account, by the way. I do recommend you don't save your password to your browser, to ThreatLocker in your browser, and definitely use MFA, which mine doesn't at the moment, but should. So I'm going to go into my customer and I'm going to look at that approval request. And when we look at this request, let me just zoom in a bit. I usually like to zoom in to 150 for you guys. Doesn't look great, but at least you're able to read everything that's on the screen. Now, we can see the same kind of things here, but the naming convention of Chrome extensions or Chromium extensions isn't usually very friendly. So there's two things that you're going to notice. One, we have a whole bunch of them built in. So you're probably going to find it as a built-in Chromium extension. And then you can select that. But you can also view it on either the Chrome or the Edge store, depending on which one it is. So this is where I find out it's a really old one that doesn't exist anymore. Or it's an Edge Chromium. Yeah, there we go, Edge. Okay, so you can also select the View on Edge or View on Chrome Store. If it's a Firefox extension, there's View on System Lookup, which is about the closest you're going to come to being able to look up one of their extensions. But you can come on, you can see what it is. But like I said, we also have most of them built in. So if somebody is requesting a browser extension, you can do it this way and see what it is. And we've got probably about, well, a lot, I don't know how many exactly, Chromium extensions, all the popular ones anyway. I think we did anyone that pretty much anybody was using. So you can always use them. But if we don't have it as a built-in, you can view it on the Edge store. The way that we process the browser extensions for Chromium is we use this file, which is a control for that extension. It's required to install it, use it, run it. So we use that as a control, which means once you've permitted it once, you're good. You don't have to worry about permitting updates to the store because basically the extensions are made up of this JSON file as well as a whole bunch of CRX files. But those CRX files can change daily, hourly, just randomly. So we found this to be the best way of doing it. So if you do permit an extension, you just have to permit it the one time for the Chromium extensions. Mandy's just posted the link to the recording, which is something I forgot. As always, this session is recorded. This is the last time that you'll get the link. So if you haven't got it this week, definitely take it now. And save it. You will be able to download the recordings. This recording will probably be available to you on Monday because our marketing department doesn't work on the weekends. Or it's not that part of it anyway. Okay, so on to policy management. So we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. I've just secured my machines. Now, what I like to do when I secure a machine is I like to look at the policies that are already there, that I've learned. And we've kind of looked at them a few times as we've gone on, but I'm going to have a quick look at the workstations. And what I really care about is the active one. So we've got a button here to update the last match. Can take a couple of minutes, but once it's done, that last match is going to be completely updated and you'll be able to see everything that's there. And then what we can do is we can filter them by policies with a last match. Now, this is everything that's running on your computers. So you do this shortly, pretty much as you lock down. You just want to have a very quick look. Don't spend a massive amount of time, but scroll down and see if there's anything that you don't want to run. So if you don't want people to use things, now's the time to change permits to denies or delete the policies so they hit the default deny at the bottom. So if you don't want them using Steam or Discord, I can get rid of them. And I can get rid of any of the policies that I don't want, even though they're running. And I can always click this icon to see exactly who's running it, when they're running it, stuff like that. So if I want that kind of information. Now, fast forward 6 weeks. Time travel a little bit here. Once you've locked down 6 weeks later, oh, no, rewind, forgot a step. Ignore me. Before we do that, before we fast forward, when we've locked people down, we want to change how we learn. Apologies for getting ahead of myself there. We showed this at the start. You've got the how we're learning. We want to change that. Once we've secured a group, we want to change what happens to new machines, because if you re-image a machine or add a new machine into that group, you don't want it to go and learn and create a whole bunch of policies. Because if you go delete a policy for Opera and then install a new machine that has Opera, you're going to have a new policy for Opera. It's just counterproductive. So when we secure the machines, we want to change this. Now, if you recall, and I'm going to go over these, this one here and this one here, create computer policies only, create group policies only. They're going to learn what's on the computer. The difference between the two of them is one creates policies under the group and the other just creates the policies directly under the computer. I personally don't think you need any of them once you've secured a group. What I recommend is this one here, because this one is going to create the policies for, I'm not going to the workstation, for the system. So the drivers, the unique files for that computer. So they are a useful one. And then some people, and it happens, you might know that all your computers are the same make and model, so you can just create all the drivers into the group level. You can say do not create, but you want to choose one of these two. Either don't create policies or just create the driver policies. And then you want to change how long you're learning for. Now, if you're not creating policies, when you select something here, it will go into monitor only. If you're selecting anything else, it will go into learning automatic, either for system, computer, or group. We've recommended 7 days when it comes to learning. 7 days, I would say, after you secure is the longest you want. For the most part, especially if you're choosing create system policies, 1 or 2 days is generally enough. I like to, for new machines, you might want to put them in system, have it for like a day or two, and just restart the machine as you're building it. Capture all those drivers, and then have it on while you're building up the machine for the user. And then when you give the user to it, you can secure it there and then. So you might get away with 2 or 3 days, depending on your building process. I like 1 or 2 days because it keeps a bit more control. Internally, we use 0 days because nothing's outside of their cookie cutters. But yeah, anything up to 7 days, I wouldn't really consider more than that once you've secured the group, unless you are learning these policies or those. If you're just learning the first 2, a couple of days is more than enough. So for me, I'm going to say 3 days and system policies only. So that just means for all the future computers that get installed, that's their default settings. Right, now we can fast forward 6 weeks into the future. So once we've gone through the 6 weeks, we kind of want to look at the policies that we have and we want to review them. Now, 6 weeks is just the time I pick. You can do it monthly, you can do it every couple of months, whatever really works for you. 6 weeks is a nice sort of middle number because it's a little over a month. The first thing you want to do is update the last match, which we did a few seconds ago. and then kind of have a look at the policies that are running again. So again, have a quick look at those policies that are running. Just glance down and make sure nobody's permitted anything stupid over the last month, or that you're still happy that they have everything. But the other thing that's really useful is the remove unused policies. Now, we're going to advise you remove policies. And the way that we advise it, and this is what the automation does through that button, is we advise that you remove policies that haven't been matched. So I'm going to say have no last match. Now, Sublime Text 3 there hasn't had a match, but it was also only installed like 3 days ago. So this is where the logic comes in. If I click this remove unused policies button, I get asked for a date. This date is a threshold. It defaults to 6 weeks ago. You can change that. The threshold means the policy has to have been created before that date and also not matched since that date. So if I've created a policy 3 days ago, it's not really enough information for you to know whether or not that policy needs to be kept, because maybe they do run it. They just run it once a week and you've only just permitted it. How could it possibly be known? Now, when you get 6 weeks down the line, it becomes a little bit more apparent. And then you might say, well, I definitely don't need it because it hasn't run in 6 weeks, or it's never ran, and we can get rid of it there. So that will remove any policy that is not matched. Now, you might look at this and go, well, not only do I not want that policy, but I don't even want them to request. And this can be done manually. So you can come in and you can go, well, actually, that should be a deny. And you're going to change that permit to a deny. And then you can choose whether or not they want to be able to request access. So do you want them to request access, kind of like the default policy? Or do you want them to just get a deny? And then you can choose to have that secured. So even if they go into that learning or monitor only process, that's going to be the same. It's going to be blocked and they're not going to be able to use it. So now we've got a deny. And the reason I've changed that to deny, because that's an important step in our deleting policies. It doesn't matter if this was created 3 years ago and it's never been matched. The automation will not delete it because it is a deny policy. You're actively saying, I don't want this program. Therefore, deleting it would then mean that it would hit something else. It would hit the default, you get a request. It's not the same, so therefore we leave the denies. The other thing that we're going to leave is these ring fence policies that come with Windows. With ThreatLocker. So the default ones for like the spool service and curl and C script and stuff like that. Because the thing is, curl, Internet Explorer, C script, they exist in the Windows core. And let's just go back to no filter. If we delete the ring fence policy for, say, PowerShell or curl, it's going to hit the permit policy for Windows core, which is right at the bottom there. And it will hit the Windows core policy. So we'll be taking away that ring fencing and we'd be leaving you with a permit, which is obviously less secure. So we're not going to delete any of those default Windows ones that come with ThreatLocker. But we will delete all those permits that exist before that date and haven't been matched. So it's kind of like exactly what I would advise you to do if you were doing this manually. I would advise you to come in and say, policies not matched in over 6 weeks, which obviously I don't have any because I don't have any policies over that, and policies without a last match. And then I would say that you should select them and then remove any explicit denies, and you should remove any of the ring fencing. So it just sort of automates that process for you. I'm not saying it will get rid of every policy, but it'll get rid of a massive chunk of the policies that you don't need. And worst case scenario, somebody say I delete the Ring Central app, somebody goes to run it, they click request, you've got it. If they haven't touched it in 6 weeks, it's not like it's, the chances of them clicking it them within an hour of you deleting it is very slim, but you can always permit it again. It's not the end of the world. But you should go through and delete that. Again, this shouldn't take a lot of time. You come in, you pick your date, you click remove, and it gets rid of most of them for you. This is policy management. This is how you keep on top of them. because you might need Royal TS now and you might be using it. And then a couple of months time, you don't need it anymore. If it's still permitted on your machine, and bear in mind one of these here is Splashtop. If Splashtop's still permitted on my machine but I don't use it, that's an entryway. I don't want that. I don't need it. If that program gets a vulnerability, I now have that vulnerability for a program I don't use anymore. So we keep on top of these policies. And you only have to spend a few minutes every 6 weeks, or every month, or every 2 months, whatever you choose, to come in and go, right, let's get rid of it. Let's delete what we're not using. In addition to that, what we can also do is let's look at the stuff that we are using. So let's go back to my policies with the last match. I'm using these programs. These are permitted. I can start thinking about ways of making myself more secure, because the first step, secure the computer. We've now said everything that the customer has, they can have, but they can't have any more without permission. That's a step. And we want to take a step in security, and that's a pretty big step. The next step is to come in and remove some of the running policies that we don't want, or the unused policies. Removing some of the policies, that's tightening that noose on the users. Probably noose is a terrible word to use for them, but restricting them a little bit more, just a little bit more. If you throw yourself in the deep end, you're going to get a lot of tickets. Your customers are going to fight you. There's going to be resistance. I'm not saying you shouldn't. If you're willing to take those tickets, by all means. We saw a customer once deploy to one VM, install the software he needed, he created his policy set, he locked down the group, and then he rolled out to every single one of his users. Because this is the software they should use, tough. That was his response. He doesn't care. They should do as they're told. If you have that ability, by all means. I did ask him, he did get some resistance, but he said, that's it. I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to make them secure. And this is the thing, it's our jobs to make people secure. Someone once told me, if you're a CISO or a security specialist, if you're liked, you're doing your job wrong. You're supposed to be there to make the decisions that they don't want to make them secure, because they're trusting you to make them secure. And then when you have them secure, you want to make them a little bit more secure, because it's not just an on-off, it's not a light switch. You take a step, you secure the machines with what they've got. You take another step, you remove some of the policies they don't need. Take another step, you remove more policies, some of the active ones that you don't think they should be using. And then you take another step, you take this program here, Discord, and we go, right, well, what do I do with Discord? I don't know, does it need everything? Can I ring fence it? And we spoke about ring fencing on Wednesday. We can do this to every application. Every single application can be ring fenced. It's just to what level. That's the bit we don't know. So what we do is we change it to a ring fence and we just turn it all on. Go nuts. Block interaction with absolutely everything. It might need it. I don't know. I personally don't actually use Discord, but I don't know if it needs these things. And what I'll do is I'll put it on monitor only. Save. Now, this policy right here, because it's in monitor only, is no different than just permitting Discord. You're not more secure just by having it, but you're taking a step towards security, because what you do is you come back a week later and you look at it. Now I'm just going to run some. I don't even have Discord. Apparently I don't even have it. Somebody just decided to add a policy for me, but okay. Probably should have done something else. But I'm going to run that program, and then what I'm going to do is I'll look at it and see what got ring fenced. I'll come in and, you know what, let's show a demonstration of this. Let's actually ring fence something out. Steam. They must have uninstalled Discord as well as installed Galway. So let's ring fence Steam. Permit with ring fence. Now, you will often think, if I have everything ring fenced, that's a lot of work. I've heard that before. It is. It is more work. I'm not going to lie to you, but I ring fence everything, every application. I am the most secure machine in the company, every single application. It took me a while to set them all up and get them all ring fenced. It took about a week for me because I ring fenced everything at once. And then looked at it a week later and locked them down. But you can do it in time. You can do, even if you just do one policy, you come in and you go, right, I'm going to ring fence one application. You look at it a week later, make it a secured policy or an inherit policy. You've taken a step. Every step is important. The idea is you want to make yourself less desirable. If a criminal is coming after you, you want to be less desirable than the person standing next to you. So the company who's trying to get the two MSPs, one MSP uses whitelisting, ring fencing, storage control, training on their users, firewall policies that restrict absolutely everything in and out. And then the other one is just basic setup. We've all taken on a customer and they've got RDP open on the servers. They use no password policies. I know which one I'd choose if I was going to be a criminal. And I'm not even a criminal, so I technically don't think like one. But the way I see it, there's not much difference between a criminal and a businessman. And that's a dangerous thing to say, but they both really want the same thing, money. They want money. They're just willing to do a lot worse things to get it. But if the end goal is the same, they want to make money and they want to do it for the least amount of work. So if they can hack someone, I hate the term hack, they can get into someone's system in a day rather than a week, they're going to. They're going to take the day. So keep that in mind. Take a step further. Always a step further to make it harder for them. Right, let's open Steam and see what it does. Hopefully it'll have an update. Yay.
Michael, while you're waiting on that, you said that ring fencing is more work. You meant more work to set up or more work to maintain, like to get it configured?
It's more work to set up because I've just had to do that. It's not much more. And you may occasionally come across something that you forgot. I ring fenced my RDP app. I went to RDP to a server that I'd not RDP'd to before, and I got blocked because my RDP app was only allowed to, apparently I did not allow everything on Steam. But everything got, I got blocked from accessing the RDP server. Just cancel that for now. I had to add it into the ring fencing. So there is a little bit more when it comes to that, but it's not much. The setup is the most part. You're going to have that initial going in and figuring out, because what you've got to do is you put it into monitor only, you come back a week later and you see. You can click that little icon, where's it gone? And you can see everything that's been blocked on that. Just change it to actions, policy action of ring fenced. And we can see everything there. We do this a week later. Now, I've got one item in registry. I've also only run this like once, so we can't really go for that. But one item in registry. I can see that it's trying to execute itself. We can see that it's going to the no more registry. 5 items in registry, but 2 folders. I can add in those registry items to that policy. I can say, okay, well, I do need these, and I can add them to the policy. This is the bit where you've got the extra work. It's just that little bit extra on the setup. Not much. Worth it. Absolutely worth it. You may come in here and see 1,000 entries for the registry and go, maybe I shouldn't ring fence it from the registry. So you can take that part off. Maybe you see that it needs to access every application, or I had a program that got file hashes. It obviously needs access to my files. So I have to make allowances, but if I don't know what to start with, I start with everything. And then I can minimize it. I could take off the registry and say, okay, well, registry doesn't work for me. Internet did, maybe, yeah. Files does. Application interaction did. So you're going to need about a week of learning that. And then you come in, and once you're done, you just change that policy back and you change it to inherit. If something else gets blocked, you cover that when it happens. But you've taken a step. It's always a step. And even if you only do one policy every time you look at your policy sets, that's one less application that's open to do whatever it wants. And this is the important bit. You could get away with just locking down the computers after your initial learning and forgetting about ThreatLocker unless somebody clicks request. You can do that. You can quite happily do that. Your computers will be more secured than they were before. The thing I challenge you to do is always ask, what's next? What can I do that's more? How can I make myself more secure? And when you get to that step, ask yourself again, what's next? Where do I go from here? Because in the end, there's always going to be something you can do, short of unplugging the computer. Everything up until that point, unless you can unplug the computer's not used, I recommend shutting it down. If it's used once a month, it should be on once a month and maybe twice for maintenance. But try and take the steps. Take every step. Any step you come across, go, can I make this more secure? Can I do this a better way? Can I lock myself down more? Can I train my users better? What can I do to be more secure? Because if you ask yourself honestly, am I as secure as I can be? The answer is probably no. There is always going to be something else. There's always going to be something else that we can do. We can ring fence something to make it better. We can train the users and explain to them that phishing emails are really clever, but they shouldn't send $10,000 just because their CEO asked them to. They should phone the CEO and go, do you want $10,000? Maybe don't word it like that because he might just say yes. But make sure that you're taking the extra steps. And it comes back to that triangle. I'm going to bring that triangle up. I think it's on my desktop here. Because those steps are in all three areas: detection, controls, and humans. Keep training. Training doesn't stop. Just because you've trained someone on security doesn't mean that you should stop. Train them again and again. If you train someone on something, wait a month and then test them on it, they will probably fail that test. Train them constantly. Keep looking at detection. Your detection, your EDR, your antivirus, they're updating their definitions. They haven't just gone, hey, we've got the definitions, we're good. That's it. Job done, let's go home. They are constantly updating their definitions to make it better. Your anti-spam is constantly evolving to make sure you're not getting as many of the spam messages. They are constantly taking an extra step. Your controls are the bit where you have to take that step. You have to put in the extra steps. You have to make sure the dual factor is on your servers. You've got to make sure your firewall is locked down, not just incoming, but outgoing. Your perimeter firewall, if you don't need the internet on a server, don't put the internet on a server. If you only need port 443 out, only put port 443 out. Locking everything down, adding the controls. And this is the bit where you can keep controlling your security. This is the bit where you get to decide how secure you are. Humans and detection is not in your control. You rely on other people. Controls are something that you have. You have them to be able to push yourself further, just in case the other two don't work for you. Okay, so let's talk about network access. But before I do we have any questions?
One just came up, Michael. Can you schedule or automate ThreatLocker to switch modes automatically? For example, during normal business hours, monitoring mode, then at close of business, kick over to secure mode, something like that.
You can schedule policies. And I'm wording that like that. You can schedule the policies and you can say that this policy is allowed. So you could turn around and say that they can run this, this, and this at those times. You could technically schedule a permit all policy above your default policy to be 8 to 5 and it capture everything. But you really don't want to. You do not want it in monitoring only during business hours. That's the most likely time for one of your users to click a button that they shouldn't. You also don't want to have scheduled monitoring at nighttime. I don't like scheduling any full off security. The way I would use scheduling is we have customers who do this, some more extreme than others, but you can schedule policies. So one of our customers locks their computers down. Every single policy, everything they're permitted to is on a schedule. And outside of their working hours, which I think they have set to 8 to 6, but don't hold me to that. Don't think it's relevant, but their working hours, they have everything permitted. And outside of that, everything is denied. Windows is allowed to run and that's it. Everything else is denied. They block everything because their computers only need to work between those hours. So that's the extreme method. You can put a schedule on every permit policy, but you might be a little more relaxed and you might want to say, okay, well, I'll permit Steam to go to the internet, or maybe, Edge Chromium to go to the internet, but I'll block it from the internet outside of work hours. I would more go that way than full monitor only. But yes, our policies can be scheduled and you can control that schedule through editing the policy. And you will see there is a policy schedule. You can choose to expire it or schedule it. And then you can choose the day of the week, the start time, and how long it lasts for. And then that policy will only apply for that length of time.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so this is my server. My server is, let's, for the sake of argument, say it's the most important server in my organization, because it's the only server. I know a lot of customers only have one server. It's their file server, it's their DC, it's whatever else they need. I want to show this first. If I open up Server Manager. Now you'll notice I'm RDP'd. I am using an RDP software, but I am RDP'd to my server. So RDP is open on my server. It needs to be. And if we go in here, you'll see the remote desktop is enabled. I am currently logged in as Michael.admin on the demo domain. And if I check on my computer, I am also Michael.admin on my demo domain. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to RDP to my machine, to my server, which will boot me off from there, but we'll live. Now, as that's going to fail, I'm going to talk to you about why. What I did last night after our session was I enabled network access control. And while we go to my policies, we can see I failed. We will go to my server and I'll probably put it up to servers. I have RDP access enabled. And I have allowed RDP access to only come from, that's my gateway. So I can only come from my remote desktop gateway. I can't RDP. If I look at this device here, excuse my spelling, this is 2.20. So I've only allowed it for one IP. This is network access control. This is a policy saying that I cannot RDP to that machine unless I am coming from that. Now, I could add in my IP address, but what happens when my IP changes? What happens when I'm in Starbucks one day and then in the airport the next day? Moving target. Now we can use this internally, like I'm about to demonstrate, or we can use this externally. Now I am not suggesting that you open up RDP on your firewall. This is for when you have to open up RDP or your remote desktop gateway on your firewall, and then you want to lock it down to only the people who need it. But if their IPs change or they're on a laptop that keeps hopping around, this is where we can use something. We can't use an IP address, can't use an IPv6, but we can use a keyword. Now, a keyword is a very simple concept. It allows the computer running ThreatLocker to authenticate against the server and use that keyword to dynamically update its IP addresses. So RDP, add that keyword into my policy, save and close. Now, if I deploy now, my server will know that that keyword is important, but I do need to tell the computer that it needs to use it. So this is where I can do my authorization hosts. So this is the part where I get to tell the computers. I can do it at an entire org level, I can do it group level, I can do it on an individual computer level. And I can say, I think, Michael Serve needs this keyword. Now, that can be a host name, a fully qualified domain name, an actual domain name, an IP address, whatever you happen to be connecting on. So if I'm out and about and I'm RDPing to michaelserve.threatlocker.com, then I would put michaelserve.threatlocker.com in there. As I'm doing this locally, I'm just going to use the host name. And I'm going to add that in. So what this does is this says, this computer here, or for whichever group I'd applied it to, should now authenticate against this host, this destination server, using this keyword. And then once that takes effect, once that's downloaded, I will be able to RDP to this server from this computer. If I knew my password. Apparently I do not. Bear with me. We will see if I can get my password. We'll do that. But you can see it got to the password stage, which is obviously half the battle. But let's, please let me copy and paste. There we go. Didn't want to type that. So now I've IDP'd to my server. I could not RDP before. I have not added in my IP address. I have not changed anything except that keyword. This works locally. This works remotely. And again, I'm not telling you to open up your ports if you don't already. This is for the cases where you have opened it up. Maybe your RMM, maybe you've got that on a server and you have it open and your machines connect to it. You can lock down the management ports on it. So only your computers, your work, your IT technicians can connect to it, but it doesn't matter where they are. So if you need your IT technician, you phone them up and go, hey, I need you to get on the Automate server right now. He'll go, okay, and he'll connect and you won't even know any different. He doesn't have to go, okay, well, this is my IP. Can you open it up? And you're like, yeah, I'll get that open. And you open up the IP. Or when the CEO says, I want to RDP to my machine, and you go, okay, well, you can RDP to your machine. What's your IP? And it's like, well, it's this. And then 5 minutes later, well, what's your IP? Well, I've moved to the hotel now. Give me this. You don't have to keep opening up the IPs. It's dynamic. It's to make it more convenient for you. It will dynamically update and open and close those ports, those IPs for you. Now, this is our new product. There is a lot more to come to make it a lot more interesting and useful. But this is just right now, you can use it to lock down access to network shares, websites, anything that requires inbound network traffic that you're opening up. Internal servers you can lock down so only certain computers are able to RDP. You can have that all open and closed without having to worry about it, and it will dynamically update if you're using the keywords. So it will hop through and it will open up what it needs. So you saw my other policy in there. I'd opened up. Now I just put a very, very broad policy in there for SMB access. So if I've got a server that needs a whole bunch of connections from, I don't know, printers and stuff like that, so the remote presence isn't going to work for me, I can open this up and put their IPs in. Now I just open up to the whole IP range I don't have to. I can put slash notations. I can put ranges. I can put single IPs. I can do IPv6. Do whatever I need. I can use a tag. So if you've got a tag for all your network printers, you can add that tag on as well. So you've got that option. You've got that there.
Whenever you're at a good point, we got a question, Michael.
I think we're at a good point.
Awesome. So is that keyword validation being handled by the ThreatLocker service on both the workstation and the server, or just the server receiving the RDP request?
The workstation and the server, they communicate together using a challenge response. It's currently on port 8810. We are looking at opening up so you can change the port. But if you do have multiple servers, obviously, and you're thinking about remote, you can obviously do port forwarding or port redirection rather to change those ports, because you can put whatever port you need into the authorization in the portal, but it does need to hit the server at 8810. And yeah, that keyword will just validate, it sends its latest IP addresses and it keeps it updated. If it hasn't had that response within 5 minutes, that IP gets shut down. So if you are in the habit of opening and closing IPs as people travel or people's dynamic IPs open, this is going to take care of that for you. This is going to open and close and restrict down as it needs to. So you can use this to make sure that you don't have to keep opening and closing. Now, if you're already locked down to RDP and you don't have an RDP port open on your firewall, I'm not saying you should. I don't think that you should take away security, but this is to add on security if you are already open. For your RMM server, if it's on premise, you can lock it down that way. You can lock down your admin portals. If you've got any of them, you can lock down your server's RDP, internal and external. So you have that ability to be able to restrict who can and can't. Like I said, you can add in IPs. So you've got static IPs, you can obviously add them, you can add keywords, you can add whatever makes the most sense to you. So for your SMB share, you might go, hey, look, my printers, I've got a tag, here's all my network printers, they need to access this server. I can add in that tag of printers. And then I just set the ports that are relevant to me. So I'm not certain I did those ones right, but.
Right forms.
Are they?
Mm-hmm.
They don't look right. I don't know why. But yeah, and you can add in all the inbound ports that you want. So network access control is just about securing that access that's the open. You don't have to open it if it's not open already, but if you have it open, you can lock it down so it's a little bit more secure for you. And this is what you want. You want that extra security. It's all about the next step. My RDP was open because I needed to RDP to my server, but I didn't need to RDP from this machine, so therefore that was closed. And this is the thing, you can lock it all down and then dynamically change it without having to do a thing. Okay, so that really is the end of my training. We now, like I said, we'd have plenty of time for questions. So I believe you had one from yesterday, Mandy?
Yes, as we were leaving the Zoom room yesterday, someone asked if you could go over those protected assets again. They were a little bit confused.
Yes, so if I go into policy, and we'll do PowerShell. So find workstations. And if we go in here and we're talking about the files. So yes, by default, I mentioned yesterday that if you have this checkbox done on, that PowerShell will not be able to access external storage or your desktop or downloads. The reason being, if we go back to my policies and go to storage control, by default, just going to go into my servers, by default, we are monitoring, we have policies for external storage, as well as your desktop and documents. If you want to add any other folders as protected assets, or if you want anything else to apply, so maybe I think my downloads are important, all I need is a storage policy for it, which is why I put the protected assets policy in, because here I can define a storage policy for the paths that I consider to be important. And that means that as soon as I have a policy for this, that ring fencing will apply to those folders as well. So this is where ring fencing uses the storage control side of things to really harden itself, because you can define what you decide is important as opposed to just the external storage. All you need to do is have a policy, and it can be a permit or deny, it doesn't matter which one, or both. If you want to permit for like the remote presence, if you're permitting for ThreatLocker machines and denying for others, that will kick in for your ring fencing as well. So you can actually harden your ring fencing by having a few extra storage policies. I don't advise putting a storage policy. In fact, is disabled by you're unable to do it on your entire C drive, because obviously you could cause some major problems to your machine. So you'll find that that's actually blocked for being added. That cause performance issues on your device. So that's the protected assets. Hopefully that explains it a little bit better. But basically the protected assets in a nutshell is a storage policy, and any storage policy will then add to that that part of your protected access from files and ring fencing.
Thank you, Michael. Back to network access control. Someone's like, so you can tell ThreatLocker on a server to only accept connections from a source that is some machine that is running ThreatLocker that you define, like a software-defined pinhole or something?
Yes. And obviously you can put, when you're putting an IP address in, the IP address doesn't necessarily have to have ThreatLocker on it. So network printers that can't have ThreatLocker, you can add the IP in for. But yes, you can set it for computers running ThreatLocker to use either the keywords, or very soon, I think it's going to be in, is it 7.2? It's either 7.2 or 7.3 coming soon. We're actually going to be able to just select groups of computers in ThreatLocker. And you can say this group is allowed, or this computer's allowed, or this organization's allowed. So you'll be able to do it that way as well. But yeah, basically, that's how that works. It will open and close dynamically.
He's like, yeah, that's what he was thinking.
But yeah, if you're not running ThreatLocker on the device, you'd have to use the IP address. But yeah, it locks down all inbound traffic. Okay, so while waiting, if there's any questions from any of our viewers, I will just go through a little summary of what we've kind of covered this week, kind of that process. And the onboarding process isn't just for when you're going through that trial. Bear in mind, this kind of applies to every future customer, or every future group of computers, or even single computers when you're rolling them out, but mostly groups, because the single computers you'll just kind of install and forget about. The first step is obviously deploying them. Sounds obvious, is obvious, very hard to learn from something that isn't deployed. So deploy to the group, deploy to the organization. The more computers you deploy to, the easier the learning process is going to be, because they'll help each other through that learning. When you've got group learning policies for the group level, you will you'll obviously learn a lot faster if you've got more computers in that group. So deploy to the full group of computers or the full organization, let them learn. Inform your users for when you're going to secure them. Let them know it's coming. Send them an email. We have the templates in the partner resources. Send them the email saying, hey, this is what to expect. It will make your life easier. Then secure them. Review the unified audit. Have a look, see what would have been denied. Make sure that your life's going to be a little bit easier with less, oh, well, I might have had one or two. That's fine. Now I don't mind if somebody tries to install something and they go, hey, I want this. Add custom rules if you see something changing. Protect yourself from future updates. Rule of thumb, if you permit the same file twice, there's a better way of permitting it. Once you're secured for that group, change the group settings. Make sure that the next person to install into that group isn't going to go and undo all the hard work you do with the policies. Monitor your policies, even if it's every 6 weeks, 2 months. Look at them every once in a while. Add ring fencing to some of your applications or all of your applications. If you want to do it all at once, like I said, it's a little bit more work, but it's all done then. And then it's a lot less work because they can't do anything they're not supposed to do. But put ring fencing on, delete policies that aren't being used, deny applications that you don't want if they're running. Say, no, you're not having Steam. You're at work, do some work. Lockdown so you can only use one browser. I had one customer who actually put in a load of policies that basically said things like, you can only open PDFs with Adobe Reader. And his logic was, if somebody called him on the help desk and went, I can't use, I'm struggling with this part of the PDF. He could say, click the third button from the left. And I asked him, similar to the guy who locked down everything beforehand, said, how did it go? No, he wasn't so much tough on the users. He was, his was just selfish means, but it worked. He said, well, it was horrible. Said everybody complained. I went, no, I want to use this. I want to use that. And he went, no, no. And he kept saying no. And then eventually they accepted it. He said, and after that, he said, I had barely any support tickets. He said, because anything that did come through, it was a simple case of click the third button from the left because he knew the software. Now, I'm not suggesting you're going to get away with that on your users. He did. But the more secure they are, the more restricted they are, the less they can do that's outside of what you're used to, which should reduce your support tickets. Slight increase at start, should see a drop down afterwards. And it should drop to less than you had before with ThreatLocker, because they won't be installing weird stuff and then wondering why their computer's flat out and nothing's working. You go on and go, well, because you've installed this program that uses 90 gigs of RAM and you have 8. So yeah, it's restricting people should make your lives easier in the long run. Reviewing those policies, locking them down, adding storage control. You know what you have, add it in, get it sorted, and restrict them from doing things that they shouldn't do. Storage control is the easiest because most users don't even notice. They might notice the USBs, but they should be following your USB policy anyway. And then if you're going to use access control, get your policies in place, lock down, decide what needs access, doesn't need access. And it's pretty simple. Turn it on. You need to be using 7. Well, I think the latest is 7.1.1, but it's 7 or above. And then network access control, you can start locking down a little bit more as well. Just a heads up on network access control, it is going to change in a later version. It is true default deny at the moment. Once you turn it on, it is no policies means it's denying. So create your policies, then turn it on. We will be releasing a monitor only version of it pretty soon. I know it's in the works. I just can't remember if it's going to be in 7.2 or 7.3, but it definitely is in one of them. So you should see a monitor only version, but you can create the policies in advance and then turn it on. And that's pretty much it. Just remember, your customers, your users, they rely on you. They want you to protect them. They might complain about it. They might kick and scream, and you might have to drag them into the light, but they do rely on you for it. And ultimately, when it goes wrong, they blame you for it. So if they get ransomware, they're not going to go, hey, you know what? I should have done what you told me to. Though I did get that opportunity, which is fun. But that's because I could back it up by securing everybody else, and I added the extra steps as well. If they do insist that they don't want security from you, take steps to protect them and minimize the damage that that one computer or 2 computers can do. Add the storage, add the ring fencing. So you get to stand and go, told you so. And then you just rebuild one computer and then move on. Day not ruined, company happy. And in the end, if you're an MSP especially, they're going to blame you if they get ransomware. So take the steps to try and minimize what damage it can do, even if they don't, if they're kicking and screaming. Because if they get ransomware, they're not going to go, well, they told me to do this and I said no, maybe later. You go, I'm telling you to do this, and if they say no, you warn them of the risks and you put in as much as you can. You teach them, you lock your firewalls down, you get your antivirus and make sure it's constantly updating, you get your monitoring, you get your threat locker on with the ring fencing, you put storage control in, you do everything you can to minimize it. So you do get to say, I told you so, rather than them other people and then going, oh, well, you should have helped save me. Because that is the end of it. They're going to say, you should have helped. You should have protected me. And it's the same if you're not an MSP, if you're just the IT director or just an IT person, they will say, you should have protected me. So protect them as much as you can. Wrap them in bubble wrap. And then when they run around crazy and fall down the stairs, they're protected. You've got them.
No questions, just a comment. Person saying if your users are downloading Steam at work, you've probably got bigger issues than cybersecurity.
So funny you say that. I used to do demos long time ago, and I saw one of the biggest things we'd see on the audit reviews was games, coupon clippers, and the people I'd speak to, obviously the owners of companies, and they're like, how does anybody get any work done? And yeah, I don't have figures to back this up, but I can imagine this has to make people more productive if they're not sat doing coupon clippers and playing Steam. And the amount of people you see, I've seen all kinds of games, and they're sat and it's like, well, maybe they only run them out of hours. And you say, no, look, they're executing it at midday and 2 p.m. And yeah, suddenly you realize that these people are just sat there not doing as much as they should. Can't guarantee it'll improve productivity, but at least it takes away some of the temptation.
Absolutely.
No more questions?
I'm not seeing any more.
Then I would like to thank every single one of you who has attended, or if you're watching this on the recording, thank you as well. Training really wouldn't be anything without you guys. It would just be me driving Mandy insane. So she appreciates it, I appreciate it. And just remember, even during the sales process, you've got your SE, you've got your salesperson. Outside of the sales process, you still have us. We're there 24/7, 365 days a year. Get help from a cyber hero. They can help with whatever it is. There is no such thing as a stupid question except the one that you don't ask. So they won't judge you, just come through, and they're always there. So if you need anyone at any point, they're there for you.
And they are here. They are physically in office 24/7, right here with us. So.
Yeah, sat in Orlando, so they should be happy. Well, it's not beautiful weather today, but it normally is.
Yeah. I put some links in the chat too, in case anyone is interested. There's a link to our deployment section of the KB if you need help with that. A link to the getting started section of the KB that has lots of articles that will help get you started with ThreatLocker, and also a link to the university because it's a great place to learn as well. And we just have one more comment, someone saying thank you. It's been a really good look at the product and they appreciate you hosting it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And everyone, enjoy your weekend. It's Friday.
It is Friday. Yes.